Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of In the Workshop. I'm Pete Meyer, technical editor. Today's topic, L3. Well, what's L3, you ask? Well, it's a brand new certification offered by the folks at ASE, and it covers light-duty, hybrid, and electrical vehicle specialist. Make sure I got that right. We're going to introduce you folks to some friends of ours at ASE. Tony Molla on the left is Vice President of Communications for ASE, and to the right, John Tisdale. He's the Executive Director for Test Development Operations at ASE. Good morning, fellas. How you doing?
Pretty good, Pete. Thanks for having us on.
Good morning. Doing well, and appreciate your help here today, getting this message out to everyone.
Well, you know, the ASE certifications, of course, that's been around a long time, and hybrids have now been around a long time. So it's kind of neat that certification is going to be offered. Let's start right off with that and talk about it. What exactly is L3 ASE test?
John, I'll let you handle that.
Yeah, well, the L3 test is a test that we've created due to the industry interest for ASE to offer certification testing to technicians who diagnose, repair, and service hybrid electric vehicles. This has really come through quite a number of years of research and development to develop the content that we've established that's going to determine the level of competency of technicians who are working in the field servicing customers' hybrid vehicles.
And when will the first L3 test certification be offered?
We're going to launch the L3 test January 1st, 2015. We're going to have an introductory special, if you will, that's going to offer technicians a discount of $50 in the testing fees if they come and take the test between January 1st and February 28th. The reason we have that time window established is with a new test, we don't have any of the statistical data that we need to validate the test in order to arrive at a pass-fail decision for technicians. All the questions are newly developed by our subject matter experts. So we need a time frame to get a good number of technicians to come in and take the test that give us the data that we need to validate the results and to establish a passing score so we can deliver pass-fail results. So that window of time for that introductory special will be January 1st of 2015 to February 28th. Technicians can actually start to register and schedule that test as of December 1st of this year.
And I know that's not uncommon with other new certifications too, to have that introductory phase. Once that's completed, will the L3 be available on a more or less regular basis?
Yeah, we just launched the maintenance and light repair certification a couple of years ago. And what we did at that point was part of our standard business practice was we ran that introductory time frame for that first 2 months that we need to get all that statistical criteria to validate the test. And then we went into blackout mode where we didn't offer the test until we crunched all the numbers and then we're able to launch the test operational where we could deliver score reports on the fly to the technicians at the test center. The L3 test we're handling a little bit differently. We're not going to have a blackout period. After the February 28th close of our pilot, if you will, we're going to continue to offer the double length test or the longer length test and a longer time through June. But the full operational test is going to be available on or about July 1st, where the test will be 55 questions in length. It'll have a 2-hour time frame for testing, and technicians will get instant results at the test center.
It should be noted during the initial phase, that's important, you won't get instant results. People who take the test in January or February and even in May will have their scores reported as soon as the science is done that John described, so we know what the passing score is going to be. So again, first 2 iterations in the winter and in the spring, no instant results, but starting January or July 1st, same as every other ASE test, instant results at the test center, and again a regular length test.
And cost involved, fellas, with the L3 exam. What will those costs be, for techs who want to take that test?
Its price is exactly the same as the other L series tests. There's a $36 registration fee, and the test, I believe, is $66. So.
Right, and you mentioned that the first section we receive for the introductory phase was a $50 discount.
Right. For those who take the test in January or February, they'll be discounted $50 because we need to get the initial group in there. That's an incentive to get as many a broader community of techs as possible.
Sure.
But right now the test it's going to be the same as any L series test. And again, you can verify that at any time simply by going to the ASE website at ase.com and clicking on the test. It'll show you what the costs are.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, if you're not aware, you can go to the ASE website too and set up your own personal page on there called My ASE to help you keep track of your certifications, your testing schedules. You can handle your registrations and scheduling appointments from that website. It's very, very helpful. Makes it a whole lot easier. I do want to go back to one thing too. I think John commented. I wanted to clarify for all the guys who are considering taking the advantage. I'm certainly going to take advantage of that discount offered. But you said the number of questions was going to be different. Explain a little more how that introductory test is going to work and what that's used for.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pete. The introductory test, basically, we're starting with a clean slate, as I mentioned. We don't have any questions out there that have been validated, and technicians have given us, responses to validate the fact that our subject matter experts wrote questions that are clear, concise, accurate, and only have one right answer. So that's part of the validation process. In order to start a new, we put out a test that's about 2 times the length of what the test is going to be when it's operational. The L3 test, when it's operational, is going to be 45 questions with probably 10 additional questions. So technicians are going to see 55 questions when it's operational. During the pilot phase, they're going to see 95 questions. The reason for the extra length is so that ASE has the opportunity to validate a large number of questions so that we can get a number of operational test forms out there when we go live with the test with instant results, and are able to offer that test to technicians with varying test forms. So we need a large number of questions, so we have to prove a large number in the beginning. So again, during the pilot phase, 95 questions with a time of 3.5 hours to take that test. That's part of the concession that we're making with the introductory special, is in consideration of that time frame, and also for the not getting an instant score report. We wanted to make a concession to technicians and really incentivize them to come in during that first 2-month window between January and February, because we need them. We need a large number of technicians that we can use to gather that data and validate our test results.
Sure.
And so that's paramount for us to get a large number of early adopters.
Sure. And I want to also clarify, since I got both of you guys here with me this morning, we and of course many others produce study guides to help technicians prepare for these exams, and we often get questions on our study questions. Where do these questions come from? I think a lot of guys have the impression that there's 1 or 2 people in the dark little corner there at ASE headquarters that come up with these test questions, but I know the process is a lot more involved with that. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's exactly what we do in test development. It's interesting. As you can imagine, we get the same question quite frequently from technicians calling into us. Hey, who writes these questions? All the ASE test content is really developed by representatives from the repair and service industry. When we write questions or develop test content like we did with the L3 from scratch, we bring together a cross-sectional group of the automotive industry as a whole, where we have manufacturer representation from the OEMs. We bring in folks from the independent aftermarket. If we're doing, I'll just go off the beaten path here. If we're doing a brakes test, for example, we'll have a technical representative from either one of the major brake manufacturers. And then we'll bring in working technicians, folks that are doing this work for a living, because all of the activities that we engage in, primarily the question writing, the very questions that we use in the ASE tests, those questions are written, and all the material is validated and created by the subject matter experts that we bring together in what we call workshops. A workshop consists of about 15 subject matter experts, again, as I mentioned, with that cross-sectional representation of the industry. What's staggering is, and I think what gives the most credibility to the ASE program is the cumulative level of experience of one of our workshop groups. We kind of keep a rolling average on these each workshop by just looking at the number of years that each individual has been in the automotive industry and the repair and service side in their career. And we usually have somewhere between 300 to 500 years of cumulative experience, which is kind of staggering if you think about it, but it really helps to allow us to make sure that all the interests of the separate sectors of the industry are represented in the creation of ASE content, because remember, ASE content has to apply to technicians as a whole, not just one segment of technicians who work on one manufacturer's type of vehicle.
Right, absolutely. And I guess because this is an L3, it's an advanced test, just like the L1 and L2, I guess there are certain prerequisites that a technician has to meet. So let's explain those to anybody who's considering taking the exam.
Yeah, we engaged, again, our subject matter experts in conversation to talk about what if appropriate for the L3 test. The coaching that we gave them was for them to consider what skills are fundamental to the skills that are represented in the L3 task list. You know, the set of skills, the job skills that we've developed for the new L3 test. So in making the decision for prerequisites, you wanted to coach these people to think about, well, what does somebody need to know first before they take the step to the advanced level? And so with that level of clarity, the overwhelming consensus of our SMEs, our subject matter experts, was to include the A6, the Automobile Electrical Electronic Systems Test, as well as the A8, the Automobile Engine Performance Test, as prerequisite requirements for the L3 test.
Sure, and I understand there's also a work experience requirement for the L3.
That's right. As with our other advanced level tests, you have to have 3 years of hands-on working experience in order to earn the L3 credential. Now, I want to just make a quick point about that because we've had a little bit of a change on both of those fronts. Our prerequisite requirements used to state that a technician had to be currently certified in the prerequisite areas. We've changed that a little bit. The way that it exists now is technicians only have to have previously passed the prerequisite tests. So, in other words, you can, if your A6 or A8 or one or both or either or have expired, you still can register and take the L3 test.
Oh.
So just you have to have had a previous pass on record with ASE to meet the prerequisite requirement. On the experience requirement, you have to have 3 years of experience to earn the certification. Okay, so there's two roadblocks. You have to have had the prerequisite requirement, and you have to have 3 years of hands-on experience, and of course pass the test. Now we'll let you go ahead if you have the prerequisites, but you don't have 3 years yet. We'll go ahead and let you take the test. And if you pass it, that's great. Once you achieve your experience requirement of 3 years, then we'll deliver your credentials to you.
Awesome. I guess too we want to stress here too that first, guys, if you have let your certifications expire, this business, especially in the area of electronics, changes so quickly that I don't see why you wouldn't keep those certifications current so that you would be keeping up with the industry and showing that you're keeping up with the industry. And I guess I want to stress too here that and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the 3 years experience does not mean 3 years working on hybrids. It's 3 years in the industry, just working on the things that we work on every day.
That's correct. And also on the expired credentials, a lot of confused by this. If you've ever passed an ASE test and you want to recertify, all you need to do is take the recertification test. Doesn't matter how long the credentials have been expired, you don't need to start over.
Right, yeah, and the recertification tests are less involved, right, than the full certification the first time around. So again, I can see no reason why you wouldn't want to go ahead and do that and do it right there at the same time. If they're expired, you can take the test. You're getting that discount if you take the introductory or take the L3 during the introductory phase. Geez, that's a great time to get all that stuff done. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that I know with L1, L2, and I know you guys are trying to accomplish. I mean, there's a lot of hybrids on the market. a lot of different designs, a lot of variances between OEMs. And I remember when I worked in the dealership, it'd be easy to have issues on some tests because you were focused on one factory might do things, of course. Now with the advanced L1 and L2, there was a composite vehicle that kind of leveled the playing field. So what kind of approach are you guys going to do with L3 to kind of level that playing field?
Well, thanks, Pete. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road with this program, and that was our initial. That's been our real challenge in consideration of creating this testing program. When we started out, many years ago, I think it was in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, we brought together a focus group and tried to determine how could ASE address development of a hybrid vehicle exam. And the overwhelming consensus of our subject matter experts then was that, well, in order to do this, the predominance in the market at that time was primarily one manufacturer, and we all knew who that is. And so with the concept of a composite vehicle, we thought, well, it was thought that it would have to take on the shape of the predominant market player in the hybrid vehicle market. So there were some challenges that were discussed, and it was felt in conclusion, early on, that a composite vehicle would limit, the other types of hybrid vehicles that don't work the way that don't work exactly the same way as the one that would be in the composite vehicle. So that was kind of the biggest hurdle. So through our development over time, we realized that there may be a way to overcome these challenges. So in bringing our subsequent groups together, we focused on the idea that what is the potential for us developing a generic hybrid exam? When you look at the vehicle drivetrains, that's really what makes the hybrid vehicles different. At least that's what all of our subject matter experts were telling us. Well, by taking a different approach and saying, well, let's focus on what makes hybrids the same, which is the high voltage system, the electrical, electronic, and the other supporting systems.
Mm-hmm.
So with that kind of clarity, our subject matter expert group said that, well, there might be a platform for us to create a generic hybrid exam applying the principles associated with the high-level diagnosis, because the consensus was that from the drivetrain standpoint, it all came down to diagnosis. At the point of diagnosis that you have a drivetrain failure, it's a unit replacement. There's not a whole lot of nuts and bolts going on like there is like in an engine repair or one of those types of exams. So we focused on when we got to the idea of focusing on diagnostics, we really looked at saying, well, we'll focus on what makes hybrids the same, the high voltage system, and see if we can develop test content that could substantiate an exam, and that's basically how we were able to jump the hurdle and create the L3 exam.
And John's point to the original question, there is no is no composite vehicle. Basically, there are 3 different vehicle systems.
Yeah, we've got one of the challenges in creating this generic exam. Yeah, back to the point is there is no. So we created the exam without the use of a composite vehicle, focusing on the generic aspect. What we were able to do with this generic concept was through our development workshops, we realized we were running into some hurdles with technology, some hurdles with terminology, and manufacturers' ways that they characterize things, with the operation of their hybrid vehicles. So what we did was we came up with a document that we call the Certification Test Reference Document. This is a 3-page document that contains information that's going to be available to the technicians during testing as an electronic pop-up. And the document is basically broken down into 3 parts. It's 3 pages, it's 3 parts. Part 1 is really, it's information that establishes all the technical constructs for the hybrid systems included in our test. So during our question writing, our SMEs used these definitions to ensure that the test content remains consistent and is understandable to technicians regardless of their hybrid vehicle specialty area. Okay?
Sure.
So that was a real hard hurdle to overcome. I'll give you a couple of examples of the hurdles that we encountered and some of the information that went into this certification test reference document, at least in this part on the first page. Hybrid vehicles, depending on the manufacturer, when there's a failure in the hybrid system, some of them throw up a light, some of them throw up a message. So there's different representations of a hybrid system failure, or a hybrid system fault, that as it's indicated to the vehicle operator. So even something as simple as like in the L1 world, we have the malfunction indicator lamp. Well,
right.
In the hybrid world, we have the malfunction indicator lamp for the OBD system, but for the hybrid system, it's not always a lamp. It's a message. It could be any number of things. So we've developed a way that we're going to characterize that in ASE test questions. And in our test questions, the vehicle will display a hybrid system warning. Okay, a hybrid system warning is displayed, whether it be a light, a message. We don't really care. We're displaying a hybrid system. So that's one of the points that this certification test reference document is going to illustrate to technicians taking this test, and this is something that they need to know and understand coming into our test, because that's the way we're going to illustrate the failure notification in the hybrid system. Another example, and this was something that everybody thought would be simple, but it got very complex very quickly. Something as simple as the vehicle readiness state. There's terms used by various manufacturers where the vehicle's ready or ready on, and everybody understands the lingo a little bit differently. So what we had to do was, ASE, we needed to create that we would apply to our test questions that determines the vehicle's readiness state. Basically, for lack of a better way to explain it, the key position of the vehicle.
Sure.
Even though most hybrids don't have an ignition key.
Right.
So where we have 4 readiness states. We have off, which is off. We have accessory, which is accessory conventionally understood. We have power on, and then we have ready to drive. Okay, and so each of those operational power mode states are provided with a definition of the conditions that are exhibited by the vehicle in each of those states, so that technicians can clearly understand where is the vehicle, what's the vehicle state at the time I'm making this diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Well, you have 3 major systems.
Right. So that's just page 1 of this document. Page 2 basically provides block diagrams of 3 major systems that we're going to consider, within the scope of our exam. And what we've done is we've developed these block diagrams based on the constructs of 3 different types of technology. We call them Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. When technicians look at the block diagrams, and the block diagrams have a very definitive description of vehicle operation of that type, each of these types define the characteristics of that type of vehicle, and we're able to use those types in ASE test questions where we don't actually call out the manufacturer's in that
Sure.
type of vehicle. So when technicians review this certification test reference document and look at these block diagrams, they're going to see our Type 1 block diagram is basically representative of Toyota or Ford or Nissan Altima and some others. Type 2 is Honda and I believe BMW as well, and then Type 3 is Chevy Volt. So we're able to write a test question to a type-specific scenario where we call out, the technician's making a diagnosis on a Type 1 hybrid vehicle, and the Type 1 as it's illustrated in our block diagram. So that way technicians can get their heads wrapped around, what it is exactly that we're talking about.
Sure.
And then part 3 of this certification test reference is a glossary of terms, because we found during our question writing that there's terminology that manufacturers use that refers to similar components, but there's different terms used. So while we were doing question development, we developed a glossary of terms that applies directly to the questions that we've developed, and in an effort to help level the playing field for technicians, so that if they see a term that maybe isn't what they see in their world, they can go to the glossary and say, oh, that's what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, the great deal of thought went into the development of this testing.
Oh, yeah, no question. Well, so let me see if I can clarify here. I mean, most of the advanced tests are just that. You have the experience. This is really a way to verifying that experience and that capability. So the test questions are going to be covering a lot of different platforms. As you mentioned earlier, maybe you are working on that one most available, if we shall say that. And you're in your shop, but there are going to be test questions that are going to be covering these other platforms as well. Is it safe to say that the majority of tests in the question will be a generic nature, but it would be to the test taker's advantage to become familiar with some of the variances in these other systems if it's not something that he or she is already used to?
Yeah, absolutely, Pete, and that's a great point. The majority of the questions in the test are going to be generic in nature, meaning that they apply globally to most all platforms of hybrid vehicles. Let's face it, our SMEs concurred that high voltage is high voltage, whether it's 156 volts or 300 volts, and the diagnostic procedures are essential, and the safety aspects of diagnostics are essentially similar. So the predominance of the questions that we wrote could be generic in nature as it applies to most all hybrid vehicles. But yes, there are going to be some specific questions that apply to the three types that we've identified with our block diagrams. So technicians reviewing this document, if they work for a single manufacturer and say all they've seen is Type 1 vehicles, it would be to their advantage to study up on the differences that they might experience in a diagnosis of a Type 2 or a Type 3 vehicle in order to give them the best shot at answering those questions correctly, when they encounter them on the test.
They can also download a copy of the task list and content areas in the ASE study guide right off of the website if they want to brush up on this and see a picture of this, various vehicle types in the documents John has been discussing.
Sure. I mean, I guess that would be similar to a lot of the preparatory guides that you guys have for the other series tests as well, right?
Right. Our preparatory guides are pretty basic. All we do is offer the task list and the content areas and some sample questions. We leave the training up to the experts like yourselves to actually deliver the technical information built around those content areas and task lists to help educate the technician. So some of the study materials that will be available and are being developed now, if they're not already on the market, will help the technicians to get that broader range of knowledge that's being discussed across vehicle types that they may or may not encounter in their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I'm going to assume that the L3 test can be taken anywhere that the current ASE test can be taken, correct?
Yeah, that's true. It's available just as any other ASE test is. The only difference is, again, initially, it'll only be available in January. You can register for it in December, starting December 1st. But after January, basically, once it launches there, it will be available as a regular ASE test along with all of our others, again, with the caveat that in the winter and the spring, you're not going to get instant results.
Right, sure. And again, I think we covered this, but just to rehash for those who didn't catch it the first time around, you mentioned the required ASE certifications. They didn't have to be current, but you did have to at least pass, the two. But if they wanted to take those or any other of the ASE certifications, they could take those at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's an advantage to doing so. You pay one registration fee, no matter how many tests you take. And if you are recertifying, now, of course, you can't recertify in the L3 because it hasn't been offered yet, but we actually cap the recertification fees to a maximum. So the best deal out there in the market is a master tech that needs all 8 recerts in L1. They really save a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, with one registration fee, if you're down, any portion of that, then yeah, plus the discount that's being offered on the introductory test, it sounds a great way to get that done all at one shot.
Well,
And,
it gets even better, Pete. Starting December 1st, we're changing the test cycle so that you register to take a test, you have 90 days to take it continuously throughout the year. There's no more blackout dates, so again, you register December 1st, you'll have 90 days to take the test from that date. Now, again, the 90 days for the L3 will start in January, obviously, but the idea is to give technicians a broader opportunity to find convenient test times and locations without having to worry about the cutoff dates that we currently have in place now. So again, 90 days to take your test from registration starting December 1st. It will make things a whole lot simpler.
Wow, that is making things a lot easier. Now, for the guys that pass the L3 test, yes, there's going to be the waiting period. You know, if you go into the first few phases to get your results. But what type of recognition, certification, insignia, you know, what can they expect to see, or will they expect to receive once they successfully pass?
Yeah, technicians that pass the L3, they'll receive the advanced level certificate as well as the advanced level insignia, as it's the same insignia that we have for the other two advanced level tests.
Okay. And I guess one thing we should harp on too, or talk about a little bit, we talked about the materials that are available from ASE. Are there any other preparation materials available that we should make sure that those who are getting ready for the L3 know about?
The best thing I can tell people for preparing for this test is to go to the ASE website at ase.com, and there's two things that I want them to read through. The first is the FAQs. We have FAQs on our website under our About link that you'll find on our website. All the FAQs really outline everything kind of that we're talking about here in a little bit more detail regarding how we're going to launch the test, how the content of the test, and what can be expected as far as that's concerned. The second and most important thing that technicians need to do is to download the study guide, the L3 study guide. As Tony already mentioned, the study guide is going to contain general information about the L3 test, with regards to just an overview and all those sorts of things. It's going to include the task list, and the task list is really what technicians need to read through and use as a benchmark. Read through the skill set that we've provided that's the foundation of this test, because all the questions relate to that task list. And so using that as a benchmark and evaluating themselves and how they feel they measure up in terms of their knowledge of those skills is paramount to their success. If they find an area that they're not comfortable with, or a few skills that they're not comfortable with, they've just identified a place and a need for their skill reinforcement. We also include in the study guide is the certification test reference document that we talked about. And that's again kind of our pseudo composite vehicle for this test. It is going to be provided as an electronic pop-up during the testing experience, but technicians need to be familiar with that because again, as I mentioned in a couple examples that I gave, there is some lingo that we're using that we've kind of genericized for the testing experience, so that all technicians are being tested on the same basis in terms that everyone can understand. So the certification test reference familiarity is paramount prior to get to the test center. There's some sample questions, as Tony mentioned, to give technicians a true flavor of what these hybrid vehicle questions are going to look like. And there's a well of training resources that are available to technicians that are out there. Some training organizations, not specifically endorsed by ASE, but provided as a mere opportunity for technicians to reach out to those folks and find out if what they have to offer is going to provide them with what they need.
Yeah. ASE did share the task list and the content areas with the training providers early on, back in July, to give them some lead time to develop some test preparation materials specific to the L3 test. As John mentioned, we don't endorse any one, but there are several out there. In addition, there are several independent trainers in the aftermarket, some very well known, some of them actually write for your publication, that also deliver hybrid training. And again, all of this taken together is good preparation. As with any ASE test, the best preparation is time on the job, work experience. And as long as you have that work experience, you should do fine.
Yeah, and I guess I want to stress here in kind of closing too, guys. When you take an ASE exam, this is a reflection of your experience and your capabilities when you earn that certification. These ASE study guides that a lot of us offer, they're not substitutes. They're not textbooks. They're not going to teach you hybrids from scratch. You have to have that foundational knowledge to begin with, right, for any of the ASE certifications. And as Tony mentioned and John had mentioned, they make those resources available to you on the ASE website. So if you feel a little weak, or if this is something you want to pursue to add to your resume, make sure you get that good foundational training before you take the test.
Good advice.
Well, there you go. Have it, guys. That's the introduction of the L3 hybrid certification exam from ASE. All the links to related information will be right down there in the video description. I just want to say thanks again to Tony and John for taking some time today to share their expertise and information, and good luck. We hope you have a great turnout for the introductory exam.
Thanks, Pete. We appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts. Take care.
We're really excited about the launch of this program, and we really hope the technicians are too, and we thank you for giving us an opportunity to get the message out.